You're listening to This Motorcycle Life, conversations about why we ride. Episode 24, Coming Home. I'm Bruce Philp, and thank you for listening. Well, as hard as it may be to believe, there are people in this world who care about motorcycles even more than you and I do. Some of those people are soldiers. And you're about to meet one who could teach us all a thing or two about the place these machines have in our lives. Hearing her story probably won't make you a better rider, but it might just make you a better motorcyclist. We'll meet her in a moment. But first, let's take care of our customary shout-outs. My pals at Eat Sleep Ride tell me that there are good things coming with the next update of their free GPS app, so now might be a good time to join the Eat Sleep Ride community by downloading it. It's a great way to track your rides, share routes, and meet other riders, and I'm a fan of their crash light upgrade, which detects a crash and immediately alerts someone who can help. You should check it out, and I'm not just saying that because they're friends of mine. And of course, I never want to let an episode pass without saying thanks for your ratings and reviews, and for your emails, which really make doing this worthwhile. This time, though, I want to tell you about one in particular that, in a funny way, kind of tees up the conversation that you're about to hear. If you listened to episode 23, my interview with Jeff Hill, you might recall that he's trying to organize a reprise of his first riding adventure, the journey from Delhi to Belfast, this time on modern Royal Enfields. But also that he might regretfully have to bypass Pakistan over concerns for the security situation there. Well, shortly after that episode dropped, I received an email from a listener in Pakistan named Saif who thought that Jeff should reconsider, saying the security situation had improved greatly. But Saif, who has extensive motorcycle touring experience in the region, didn't stop there. This was his offer. He wrote, "I would like to invite him to Pakistan, and I, along with 30 or so bikers, would love to host and accompany him while he's in Pakistan." And he added that while he's here as our guest, all his expenses will be happily borne by me and my friends. That made my day, as you can imagine, and I think it made Jeff's day too. But what stayed with me was not only that this guy had reached out across thousands of miles to help a fellow rider he didn't even know, he'd done it on behalf of 30 of his friends who were ready to mount up and make sure that Jeff had whatever he needed to make that ride happen. Well, that kind of camaraderie is rare in daily life, but it can be one of the best things about motorcycling, and it's just one theme in the remarkable conversation that you're about to hear. So let's get to that. Once you become interested in the history of motorcycle culture, it's not long before you discover the strand of military DNA that runs through it, especially here in North America. Lots has been written, for example, about the military roots of so-called outlaw MCs. And lots has been written about the intertwined histories of motorcycling's favorite jacket and those worn by military pilots. Motorcycling remains such a fixture in military life that some branches of the service provide compulsory rider training for the protection of service members. And the incredible number of motorcycle-themed veterans organizations seems to suggest that bikes remain a powerful symbol in that world, even after their service is done. Well, it's a fascinating subject, and it's been on my podcast wish list for a long time. Once again, no surprise, it was a listener who made it come true. Valerie Lower is a motorcyclist, or at least that's all she wants you to see if you meet her on the road. But the journey that got her this far isn't so simple. The story of her life with motorcycles began before she could even drive, interrupted by sudden adulthood, and then by a patriotic call to duty. She would be deployed in Iraq in a combat role for 2 years and 7 months, only to fight an even longer battle back to life when she returned to America. Motorcycles were part of that battle, and they are part of the life that she got by winning it. Valerie wrote me to suggest an episode about soldiers who ride, and I thought maybe the best way to understand that relationship was to ask one. I reached Valerie Lower at her home in northeast Pennsylvania. Hi Valerie, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. I'm gonna try to stop complaining about the weather since it's only November. So I'll just ask you instead: Are you still riding there in Pennsylvania?
As much as I can. I went out the other day and I was home within 45 minutes because I was freezing, and the weather has gone downhill since then. So hopefully I would like at least 2 or 3 more days of riding, but I don't know if we're gonna get it.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way. I came 300 kilometers short of my goal for the year. So that's, they say men plan and God laughs. So here we are. Well, look, thanks for speaking with me today, and really for kind of stepping up. This came about as a result of some correspondence that you sent me just as a listener, and so I appreciate you kind of playing along. The topic that you were interested in is one that I've been interested in for a long time, which is soldiers who ride motorcycles, and the in a sense, I think you're kind of the perfect person to have this conversation with because you've had two lives as a rider. You had one before your military service and then another one afterwards. So I'm super curious to see how the role that bikes play in your life has changed. So why don't we start at the beginning? Tell me a bit about how motorcycles first came into your life.
Well, I grew up in a small, a very small town, and I mean, all we really had to do was go bowling or stand on a corner, and so that led to a lot of like anything with wheels, skateboards, roller skates, bikes, all kinds of stuff. And then when I was about maybe 10 or 11, I was introduced to ATVs, and shortly after that, I got a little Suzuki 125 motorcycle that I I beat up really bad. Like I didn't know anything about taking care of a bike or so I yeah I after I mean it never died on me. I'm surprised because I don't think I ever even changed the oil in it, but uh after that it was just like anything anybody would let me ride, anything I could afford, I was on it. So um
Country kids
and
on
then
bikes.
what's that?
I say country kids on bikes. It's the same everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. And then like when I was 16 I learned I got my license right away. I learned how to change my tire, my oil, and some basic maintenance stuff. And then it just that's when even that just became an obsession. Like I love engines. I love anything on wheels, except for things with three wheels. I'm not a fan of three wheels, but two and four, I love.
Yeah, which I guess that kind of is going to come up a bit later in your story. But yeah, I definitely had that sense. In fact, I think when you and I were exchanging emails, you described yourself as the phrase you used was ripping around on old 125s, and I recognized that ripping around thing. Do you think that starting so young made your relationship with bikes a bit special? I mean, I think like a lot of us feel like kids when we ride, but not all of us have literally been one. I wonder if they get under your skin a little more when you start so young.
Yeah. Well, I know for me, it was really good timing because um, I lived in, like I said, I lived in that little town, and then my mom and my stepdad decided to move out to a farm, which was about 14 miles away, and I had ridden like my BMX bike into town along the railroad tracks and stuff like that, and it would take a couple of hours to get there. You know what I mean? I was just totally separated from my friends, and that hurt my heart. So having the bikes out there gave them a reason to want to come out and hang out with me, and it gave me something to do by myself when nobody else was there. So I spent a lot of time just riding in the woods and literally just riding around, not doing anything crazy, but just exploring. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
um, it gave me it gave me freedom to do anything but sit around the house. You know what I mean? And it kind of was like my friend, I guess.
Yeah, I bet you that's going to resonate for a lot of people. What kind of rider were you? I mean, you said you would just sort of poke around in the woods. Were you a pretty mellow rider, or did you tend to give it some stick?
I if adults were around, I didn't really push the limit because I didn't want it to be taken away from me. But the one reason why I love the fact that I got to ride when I was a kid was because I learned what it felt like to wreck, you know what I mean, very early. So I learned the limits of that little bike. Most of the roads were dirt. I think we had like a small section of paved road, but I spent most of the time in the dirt with not knobby tires. They weren't like off-road tires or anything. So, I would fishtail that thing. I would just ride in circles and see how fast and how far, or, how far I could take it. And I would try to do some mild jumps, but it was kind of heavy, so it didn't really go far with that. But hill climbing, all kinds of stuff. Later on, I did end up getting a dirt bike, which was it was oversized. I'm tall. I was like 5'11" throughout high school, so
Wow.
I'm tall, but I had a KX 500, and that was super tall for me. Like I had to ride up alongside of the porch just to lean it against the porch because I couldn't touch the ground. So,
Wow.
Yeah, I got a little bit stupid on that, but I don't know. I was very fortunate. I didn't break any bones riding. The worst I ever got was some road rash, and which is lucky too, because I didn't even have a helmet back then. You know what I mean? I was just riding. So.
And was that last
lucky.
that yeah, well, road rash is really just a lesson, I think. And that last bike you mentioned, was that the last one you had before you left home and kind of got serious about life, or were there more?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that was the last one I had. I actually moved out of my parents' house when I was about 16. I moved in with some friends and her parents, and I had to go to school and I had to work full time and stuff like that. So I didn't have much time to play. And the time that I did have, I spent either in the gym or playing sports. So life I kind of had to adult rather early, if you will. And
yeah, that's to say the least. And
which may affect my riding now, to be honest.
It really, in what way do you are you more cautious now, or are you kind of regressive about it?
Again, I think if there's people around, I try to be very responsible because I don't think I'd be able to live with myself if I hurt somebody else. But because I just got back into riding this year, I learned very quickly. I learned two things. One, riding on the road, like the streets, populated streets, is very different, obviously, from riding elsewhere. But what I didn't realize was that as a kid, I rode intuitively. Like, I just somehow knew how to make turns and things like that. And when I took the motorcycle safety course to get my license, I could not. They kept telling me to countersteer, and I could not figure it out. Like, I'm just like, I was scared. You know what I mean? So I just didn't understand what they were telling me. So when I would leave that class, I would take my bike and I would go and practice. And ultimately I figured out what countersteering is. And now that I know that, I find myself that when nobody's around, I'm pushing the limits because I don't know these bikes fully yet, and I'm not sure what they can do. And I'm excited to learn.
Right.
And I'm a little bit upset that winter is here because of that. But
yeah, well, take the bad with the good, I guess.
You go ahead.
I was just going to say, it sounds like when you left home that you didn't just abandon bikes, that it was something you did reluctantly, and can I assume that you expected that you'd have them back in your life someday, or did you think that was it?
Um, I honestly, I I didn't kind of grieve the loss, if you will, because um, I had a car, and I, I loved that car so much, and it was a little 1988 Escort GT, so it kind of gave me my fix of working with a machine. I did stuff to it and whatever, but uh, I didn't really think about motorcycles again until my second tour in Iraq, which was like 2009, and I left home in like 1995. So
Wow.
it was a long time, you know what I mean? But throughout that whole space was filled with working on vehicles and tanks. So I had my fix, I guess.
Yeah, except for the countersteering part, I guess. Uh, I right. I get the sense that you've always been a pretty independent and strong-willed person. I'm kind of reading that between the lines of of our exchanges. And you left home pretty young and kind of made your own way in the world, including getting your own education. And so I'm curious to know what makes someone so independent-minded and so strong-willed. What makes them enlist?
Um, well, my independence really didn't have anything to do with my enlistment. Uh, I think just because of, my upbringing, there wasn't anyone really there to take care of me, so I had to learn to take care of myself. And in doing that, nobody else nobody else was allowed to have input. You know what I mean? If somebody wasn't going to do it when they were supposed to, that's your game's over. You know what I mean? So
Right.
I'm going to make my own choices for myself and live my life. The reason that I enlisted was because I did exactly that. And by the time I was 21, I think, or 22, I honestly felt completely fulfilled, and I had accomplished every goal that I had set for myself. And I mean, I had a great job and all of that. And I kind of got bored, if you will. So, then I started trying to get into hobbies and stuff like that. And then when the war started, that's when I enlisted. And I guess it kind of does come back to it, because I enlisted because I already felt like I had accomplished everything that I wanted to. And I was able to do that because I live in America. You know what I mean? If I lived anywhere else, I might not be able to have done that. So.
Wow, that's impressive, especially given how young you were. So you were, and I'm thinking about this. I mean, I don't know much about this stuff, but I know that you were in a National Guard unit, but it's one that is deployed often. So you must have been aware that that possibility was out there, or even that it was probable. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, actually, I joined the unit that I did specifically because I knew that they were going to be deployed. My sister was in the unit at the time, and she told me that they were, gearing up for a deployment. So that's when I went, and I said, like, I want this job because I want to be in this unit. And in the National Guard, you can kind of do that sometimes because each unit has a specific designation. So I had already gone to school to be a mechanic, and the unit that my sister was in was a maintenance battalion. So I wanted to fix tanks, and that's what they were looking for. So I made sure that that was in my contract because I wanted to serve my country. Like, I didn't just want to join because I wanted to be in the military. You know what I mean? Like, I joined because I wanted to serve my country.
And so you were deployed to Iraq, and you were there for what seems to me an incredibly long time, or must have seemed to you that way too. We don't need to talk about your deployment, obviously, but I want to establish that you were in a combat role, right? I mean, you say that you fixed tanks, but you weren't fixing tanks in a parking lot in Los Angeles. You were in the thing. Is that fair? Is that right?
Yeah, no. I was deployed twice. My first deployment was a year and a half. My second deployment was 13 months. And for my first deployment, I went as a tank mechanic, and it was interesting because we were on a defunct Royal British Air Force base, and they still had like hangars and stuff there. So we used the hangars as our tank barns, and I did that. I worked on tanks, and I also went on missions as a 50 cal gunner and a saw gunner. And I went out as a lioness in support of the infantry when they would do, their missions and stuff like that. So I didn't just fix tanks, but I did fix tanks in the middle of where I was right between Fallujah and Baghdad. So I was right in the middle of it. And my second tour, I went as an ammunition specialist. So I spent most of my time on an airfield, supplying weapons to the attack helicopters and stuff like that.
Still sounds pretty intense to me. I have to imagine that being away for so long and in such a radically altered reality makes you miss things, pretty intensely. And I was going to ask you if motorcycles were one of the things you missed. But I think you said a minute ago that you didn't really look back after you got a car. So, but I guess I'm still curious. Did bikes, were they in the back of your mind? Were they part of the life you envisioned when you were going to come home, or had they not yet reasserted themselves in your life?
No, they absolutely did. On my first tour, not on my post, but there was where were they? They were in Ramadi. Part of our company was in Ramadi, and Al Taqaddum. And I would travel there often, and one of our sergeants had found this little tiny, I don't know, it might even have been just a little 125 or something. And he would ride that thing around, and I remember being so jealous. And I was just like, all this stuff is going on, and it can be pretty miserable. That would be awesome. You know what I mean? Even if I just got to ride it up to the tank in the morning, it would just be awesome. But, I still didn't think about getting one. Because I kind of, when I came home from that tour, I wasn't in the best space. And I just wanted to go back to Iraq. So, I had some time between the tours, obviously. And when I came home from leave on my second tour, I went and bought a bike. I went and bought a bike off a friend of mine, and I had it ready for when I got home. So I guess that's probably, like, seeing him on that motorcycle in the desert was probably what kicked off me wanting to have a bike again. You know what I mean? Because I definitely remember being jealous of him.
That must have been a really powerful connection, given the kind of the context that you were in and the joy that, you could see this guy having. That must have, I don't know, for me anyway, I suspect it would make bikes very big in my mind.
I think if I would have had more time to, like, think about stuff other than jobs there, you know what I mean? Like what I was supposed to be doing and where I was supposed to be and when, I probably would have been obsessive about that bike and maybe tried to buy it off of him, or, you know what I mean? Find out where he got it and try to get myself one. But yeah, I don't know.
Makes sense to me. So coming home was not easy, and obviously I don't want to, pry into the experience that you had, coming home. But I'm wondering, if you like, well, maybe whatever you're willing to share. But I'm curious to know kind of what was missing for you, that put you on the path to riding again seriously.
Well, when okay. So first of all, during my first tour, the only thing that I genuinely missed was having a consistent supply of toilet paper and like water. You know what I mean? Where I was, we didn't have running showers for about 3 months. So taking bird baths gets old. But when I came home, I didn't really miss, there wasn't much about America that I missed. And it was actually what gave me such a hard time. You know, like I just spent, a year in Iraq and seeing how they live and their daily experiences and all that stuff. And then I come home and I see people treating each other like garbage because, I don't know, they're not moving fast enough when they're driving, or, they have to wait in line longer than they want to or something like that. So I immediately was just very disappointed in our culture and how not nice to each other we are. So that's why I wanted to go back to Iraq. And
wow.
After my second tour, it took me a solid 2009 to 2015 or so, or I'm sorry, 2010 to 2015 to kind of get on my feet in a place where I could actually think about having any kind of fun, you know what I mean? And I have a lot of trouble in social situations. So eventually I got to motorcycling, and it's something that I can do completely by myself. I can be in my own headspace, or I can do it with people. You know what I mean? I've recently tried to seek out some riding groups and stuff like that, and I think I may have found one. I'm not sure how it's going to go yet, but I only really have one friend that rides that lives near me. So we did get one ride in before the weather got cold, because I didn't have a bike that could keep up with hers at first, and but that's something to look forward to next year. But I miss doing fun things and being able to enjoy life, and I guess that is what really led me back to motorcycles.
Yeah, I think that's going to resonate for a lot of people. It's funny you mention being disappointed that people treat each other so badly. Your first note to me was super kind, I thought, because you'd written, I think, primarily to coach me on something that had come up in an earlier episode, which just struck me as such a biker thing to do. So I wanted to acknowledge that. But just to briefly loop back to the your time in the service, one phrase in that email kind of jumped out at me, and it's where you said, that I should do what we do in the Army, which is practice. And you used the present tense, even though you're retired from service. And it got me wondering, it feels to me like once you have been in that kind of role, it makes a really strong imprint. You don't leave it behind the way you do a job. Even setting aside the trauma of combat, it's not just a line on your resume. What do you feel now, looking back on it? What did it give you that's still part of who you are today?
Well, I think what I think happened is I think it replaced completely who I was, because there's no part of my life that is not somehow related to the military, whether it be, how I take care of my car, or how I keep a schedule, everything like that. Like it, I don't know. So like when I ride, so before we go on missions, we do PPE and PPI. So you inspect, you make sure you have all your personal protection and everything, and then you inspect your battle buddy and make sure they have theirs, and vice versa. So like when I'm preparing for a ride, I still do that to myself. You know what I mean? And it's just like the same order every time. You know what I mean? Things like that.
Yeah, that makes
sense. They don't untrain you.
Right.
You go and train. You literally do the same thing over and over until it becomes a reflective or a reflexive action, and then they don't take that out of you. So it's just who I am now. Did I answer your question?
It does. It did. It's a smarter answer than the question probably was. I completely understand. So you sort of touched earlier on the decision to have motorcycles back in your life, but it sounds like it was a few years between the sort of the wanting and the actually, getting your license and doing it. Can you share with me a little bit how it felt for you that first day you were sort of out on the road and a rider again?
Oh yeah, I was terrified. So, so the motorcycle that I bought when I came home on leave was a little Ninja 250, and oddly enough, when I rode that thing, it was like when I rode when I was younger. Like I didn't think about the turning or anything. I just did it, and I guess it's just because of the style of the bike. But I recently graduated college, and my gift to myself was a motorcycle. And I don't even know how I came across it, but I saw the Suzuki Van. So I did a search at my local dealerships, and I saw that one of them had one that was new old stock, so it was $1,000 off, and I was like, that's my bike. And I went and I bought it. There was snow on the ground, and I had no way to get it home other than to ride it. So I did, and I got to my house, and I was like, I'm not done yet. So I turned around and I went back out for a little ride. I was freezing. I just had jeans on and a coat, like no riding gear other than a helmet and gloves. And as it started to get warmer, I rode a little bit more, and I was so nervous, you know what I mean? And that translates into your steering and stuff. So I was like, I just thought to myself, I better just take the safety course because I'll probably learn something. I'm sure I'm not doing something right. And if I am wrong, then maybe I shouldn't be riding. Mm-hmm. So I signed up for the safety course. And when I was finished with that thing, that's when I started to enjoy my bike. And I was just like, okay, now, they're only 200 cc's. So I'm like, all right, now I need a motorcycle. I want a bigger motorcycle. So I went, and the Van is mine until it dies or I die. I'm never getting rid of that because it's just fun. It's beautiful. I love it. But I went out and I bought a KLR 650, and then later, a couple months later, I got a Triumph Bonneville. And the 650, I just couldn't get comfortable on it. It's too top heavy, I don't know. It's weird. I can touch the ground. I can't flat foot, but I can, stabilize myself. But I just couldn't get comfortable on it. And the Bonneville, I fell in love with it. I owned it, I think, for 2 or 3 months, and I put over 800 miles on it.
Wow.
And yeah, and I only got to ride it for about a month and a half because I had to get it inspected and get tires and all that stuff. So, but ultimately I sold the Bonneville and I traded the KLR in on a DRZ 400. And that thing is just like a bigger version of my Van, and I love it. I feel totally comfortable on it. I can, put luggage and crap on it, and I, again, am frustrated that winter is here now and I can't ride it more, but that's...
Yeah, people love those DRZs, and they have a long tradition, including apparently. So I was looking this up as part of my preparation for this, and I discovered that apparently the Australian Army uses them. So I have to believe the utility of these things. Besides being fun, they must be incredibly tough and capable. So
yeah, I know that the U.S. Army. Yeah, well, I don't know if they still do, but I know at one point I thought that there was a diesel version of the KLR for the U.S. Army. But yeah, I mean, I like the fact that they're carbureted. I like, well, my Van isn't, but the DRZ is. I like that it doesn't have the ABS. Honestly, I mean, we've had ABS on our vehicles pretty much since the time, well, probably definitely since the time I've been driving, but some of my early cars didn't have ABS, and I still am not totally comfortable having it. So I like that it doesn't have that. But I'm not sure what it is. I don't know if it's just because it's the way I rode when I was younger or what, but I mean, that thing does what I tell it. You know what I mean? I don't listen to it. It listens to me.
Right.
So, and I couldn't get there with a KLR.
I think it's just magic. I don't think there's any explanation sometimes for why we connect with a bike, but I can certainly relate to it. I was struck by something else you said when we first corresponded, and I just want to drill down a little bit on the sort of, if you like, the parallels between, being a motorcyclist or the affinities between being a soldier and being a motorcyclist, if you like. And you talked about the role that riding plays in your life today, and you said, if I might be permitted to quote you, you said that you find riding to be a healthy outlet, and it gives my brain an opportunity to work like a soldier in a world where this behavior is considered suspicious or paranoid, pardon me. And then when I'm done with the ride, I can hang up that hat for a little while. Well, I kind of understood, I have no personal experience to draw upon, but that intuitively felt like a real truth to me. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think there's something in it for everybody who rides.
Yeah. So, well, like I said, I have trouble in social settings. Like, it took me a few years just to be able to go to a restaurant and not have to sit in a certain place, or, I still cannot walk into a building and not look for the exits or look for threats or, all that stuff. But I used to be very verbal about that, and it controlled everything that I did. So it was hard to keep friends, basically, because I was, you know what I mean? Like, people are like, what are you worried about? And I'm in my head, I'm like, why don't you understand me? But so when I guess it's very mission oriented for me. So I can still have fun just riding my motorcycle, but I get to do things like scan my sector, if you will. So, when you go on a convoy, everybody in that vehicle has a certain sector that they're responsible for. That allows me to do that, and nobody knows that I'm doing it. You know what I mean? Other than other riders know that you got to have eyes in the back of your head. It feels like home for me. And also just like the preparation. I wanted to go on a moto camping trip this summer. I didn't get to go to, it just didn't work out this summer, but I want to plan one for next summer. And that allows me to use my skills in, planning. I helped plan a couple convoys, and you have to, make sure your vehicles are ready. They have everything they need. The lighting is right, the fuel, so I think it's just the preparation and having a goal and going there and achieving the mission and coming back. I don't even know if I can put it into words that will satisfy your answer your question in a way that everybody could understand, but it takes my normal and makes it normal.
Right.
If that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. I thought it was a really smart insight, and it felt like a connection point, if you like, because, I think when I get ready for a ride, or when a lot of riders get ready for a ride, there's a process, or there's a ritual that feels important. And, for those of us who have not experienced what you've experienced, that the feeling of importance is, kind of heightens the the intensity of the experience of riding. And you have it too, but for you, it's an echo of something else that was even more important. If that makes sense. So I totally get it, and I thought it was such a smart kind of insight. I wonder. Sorry, go ahead.
It also allows me one of the mantras of the Army is a good soldier is always prepared. So it also gives me the experience of something going wrong and being prepared for it. You know what I mean? Like if something doesn't go the way I planned, how am I going to deal with that? You know what I mean?
Right.
And, everybody that's been riding for a while, especially like dual sport riders and stuff like that, they have their tools and their tubes and their, whatever they might need. I want to experience that again. And this allows me to do that because I don't have any experience like moto camping or even just going on a long trip, but I'm like so looking forward to it just to see how I do. So it's a way to challenge myself too, which I don't often find here because, not to sound like a jerk, I guess, but there's not a lot in regular life that I find challenging. So, I mean, the stuff that should be easy is hard for me, and the stuff that's hard for other people is easy to me. So it's I don't know, it offsets it.
You could be on a very slippery slope. I think I may have mentioned in our correspondence that I had my first experience moto camping this summer with some guys, and it was like just a very short trip just to kind of get a taste of it. But most of the guys in this group had done very long trips in the wilderness, and they would sit around and tell stories about remember that time you broke your ribs and we were 1,000 miles from the nearest hospital. And for them, figuring it out was made for a great story. Like there was a level of self-respect that came from that experience that I don't think you could get just going for a ride. So in as much as I don't understand it, I do understand it. But as I say, I think that this may be the beginning of a long journey for you. I wonder what you think of this. I read an article this week about veterans and motorcycling. I actually read a few, and this quote caught my eye. I guess this guy was an adventure rider, and he, as it happens, was in Africa. And the quote goes like this. He says, "It's danger, but it's controlling danger. As soon as you get on a bike and take off in Africa, you very quickly and instinctively decide if you want to live." And I don't know, it sounded to me like that was part of the therapeutic benefit of riding for him, was simply the choosing joy and choosing life, if that makes any sense, and that it's possible still to feel that, to feel that joy. Has that been your experience? Does that quote resonate for you?
Yeah, it does actually. So during my first deployment, when we first got there, I was taking it very seriously. Like we got mortared daily for months until Ramadan happened, and I was just, super on edge and very focused on getting the job done and doing what I was supposed to be doing or whatever. And everybody around me was, they were just talking. They were still working and stuff, but they would talk to each other and they would be laughing about stuff. And there was one guy who was my driver for almost all of my missions. And I asked him, like, how can you be laughing right now when we're in this situation? And he was like, if you don't learn how to laugh at it, it'll kill you. And that made me realize that I had to be okay with the fact that I might not go home, or I probably won't go home. You know what I mean? So I think that is why what I see as danger, like real danger, is probably way more than what most people see as danger. but the things that they see as dangerous, I don't. And like here now. So, you know, something like a car accident happens, or, you know, a medical emergency or whatever, I just get very focused, and I'm very calm, and I don't freak out. But if I'm going to be late for something, I freak out. Like I sometimes if I'm 5 minutes late, I won't even show up. I'll just call and say something came up. I can't make it because I can't stand being late. You know what I mean? And it's like the little stuff that is, I should be able to brush off. I can't quite do that. So it's like I still haven't found the balance between everyday normalcy and something I don't even know what, and danger levels. I'm not even sure what, but
yeah.
I after, you know, or actually right, my decision to go back to college was me choosing to live my life here instead of constantly living in the past. And it was like one of the best decisions that I could have made for myself. So motorcycling is kind of just an extension of doing that and finding healthy ways to challenge myself and like still be able to use my past and everything that goes along with that, and just deal with it day to day, because I didn't deal with it very well for for years. So I'm still a work in progress as far as that goes.
Well, I guess we all, in some way, are, even if our stories are less, intense than yours. It's funny hearing you talk. You remind me of every long distance rider I've ever spoken to, including, some of the ones that I've had on this show. This idea of kind of putting yourself out there where you don't have a choice, but to deal with whatever comes up, and also something which you didn't mention, but I wonder what you think of this. Oftentimes, people who do these sort of epic rides in wilderness places will talk about how they learn to trust that people are more good than bad, and that if there's an opportunity to be helped, you should let people help you. And I've never heard it framed in a way that's therapeutic, if you like. But it did strike me as somehow relevant. I think it's part of why I'm picturing you doing multi-thousand-mile rides someday. Does that make sense to you? I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but does that make sense to you?
Yeah. I'm not good at accepting help. Normally, I'm not. It's definitely something I struggle with, but it's weird because, I mean, frankly, and I'm not sure why it is this way, but if I needed help and just a civilian came up and offered me help, and a soldier came up and offered me help, I'd absolutely have no problem taking help from a soldier. But a civilian, I don't think there's trust there. Maybe that's what it is. But I'm self-reliant to a fault. So, and I know that. I try to take opportunities depending on what's on the line. You know what I mean, with letting people help me. But I definitely struggle with that. So while I can understand it, I'm not at that level yet. Being able to accept help.
It's interesting. I mean, I think you're probably being hard on yourself. I know you seem to have accomplished so much. I mean, you've got, you have a home now, and you have a relationship, and you have, bikes in your life, and you have, I guess, a second education. It seems like maybe self-reliance is good enough. But in any case, that's above my pay grade. But it does make me think of a couple of other things I wanted to ask you about. The things that you mentioned when we spoke last week about what a motorcycle means to a soldier who rides. And the first one touches on this idea of you accepting help from another soldier. I think you sort of said that, I guess I would call it esprit de corps. You said that one of the things you liked about motorcycling, and I'm paraphrasing here, is that it meant a lot to you to know that other riders have your back, and that we'll take care of each other, and that was somehow familiar and reassuring. Has that actually been your experience, and can you talk a bit about that?
I haven't had a lot of experience with it just because, this is my first summer riding, and I've been, well, at first it took me a little while to even want to reach out to other riders just to find people to ride with. But recently I contacted a local, there's like a little charter around here of dirt bike riders, and they have their own track and all that stuff. But they do other things like fun runs and whatnot. And I went to a meeting. Now, before I went to this meeting, in my head was, I'm probably going to be the only female there, and I'm probably going to be the oldest person there. But I was only half right. I was the only female there, but most of the guys there were, 5 to 15 years older than me, which is awesome because they were all very welcoming, and there was no like weirdness about it. We talked about bikes and, about future plans and stuff like that. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to join that just for the camaraderie. But the fact that they were like that, like it wasn't, they asked what kind of bike I ride and what kind of riding I do and all this stuff. And there was no air of competition or, oh, well, we're a dirt bike riding group, or, you know what I mean? It was just, well, welcome, and if there's anything we can do, let us know. And one of the guys actually sent me a bunch of information about local dual sport organizations that I had no idea about. So that's been my only experience so far, but I don't doubt that it's out there, because even like I was on a ride this summer and I saw someone a biker alongside of the road, and I pulled over just to see if he had a cell phone or if he needed anything, but turned out he was just taking a break. But still, like I feel more comfortable doing that than I would pulling over for a broken down car. And I'm not sure why, but I just feel less danger, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
it's because my body is free. I'm not.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, not to mention the fact that you feel a little more of a level playing field if you're with another rider, whereas vehicles are always a bit of a mystery.
Yeah.
The other thing that you mentioned when we talked last week that I, frankly found kind of, moving, was something to the effect that motorcycles gave you a connection to who you were before the war. And again, I'm paraphrasing, and I apologize if I've, not accurately conveyed the sentiment, but I just thought again that it was such a great insight. Can you share a little bit about that, or is that too personal?
Yeah. No, well, I mean, obviously before the war, I had a job, I was just a normal person. I had a job, I had a bunch of friends. I was always doing something, whether it be working or, going out and playing pool or whatever. And after the war, there was none of that. And when I tried to do that stuff, things got really bad. Like I started using alcohol to, like this, not feel feeling, as Family Guy, that guy from Family Guy says. But
right.
I started abusing alcohol, and I became suicidal, and I just took a really bad turn for the worse. So what I did was volunteer for another deployment, and clearly that was just kicking the can down the road.
Right.
And I came back, and I still kept making the same mistakes. So at that point, I didn't even know who I was. Like, I basically just felt like a robot that had been trained to do this one thing, and this is all you know how to do now. you don't fit in there anymore. And now you don't fit in where you are from. So what do I even do? And I think just me making the choice to get back on motorcycles was something that I had previously done. So it's obviously something I would have done, continue to do if I didn't go to war. So, and then I just, I started modifying the bikes a little bit and really got back into the creative part that was also a huge part of who I was when I was younger. Like that little Escort, I mean, I bought ground effects for it. I did all kinds of fancy things that were cool back then. But, now that I have the DRZ and stuff, well, even the KLR, like I modified them a little bit, and it's just, I'm excited about building the KLR to how I want it to be. And I bought a car, after I came home from Iraq, and I didn't do anything to it. I still haven't done anything to it. I care less about it now than I did, but I wanted it to remain in its original state for some reason. And it made me feel like it wasn't even mine. Like I had to take really good care of it because I just didn't even have a reason. So I feel connected to my bikes. I feel like they're an extension of me. I feel like it's just that it's a little tiny part of my past that was good. And I can have that back. So, and I can't drink and drive. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I find any reason I can to get on that bike. So, I mean, I rarely drink at all anymore, but, if I probably could have benefited from getting one years ago, because I want to be on it so much that I don't want to be impaired in any way.
Yeah, I understand that. It's funny how it motivates you to take care of yourself. You wouldn't think so, given that it doesn't.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I even went back to the gym and started lifting because the KLR was so heavy, and I'm like, I need to be able to lift this up if I drop it. Like fortunately I never did drop it, but if I was in that situation, I would be super embarrassed if I couldn't pick up my own bike.
Yeah, no doubt. When we first spoke, you were very concerned that you didn't want to be, put in a position where you were asked to speak for all soldiers, and so we try to avoid too much, kind of expert testimony, if you like, and just focus on your story. But I know that after that, you went and did a little bit of research to see if what you had experienced was common. And it seemed like you weren't alone among veterans in your feelings about this. Can you talk a bit about what you found when you did that research?
I had just read a couple articles about, I found out that there's actually groups around the country. Of course, none of them are here, but there's groups around the country that like teach veterans how to ride, how to build bikes, how to do machining and things like that, as basically like a therapeutic outlet for PTSD and whatnot, and other injuries too. But I didn't know that. You know what I mean? Like I didn't even know that those existed, and I think it's awesome because it does give you something. Like I hate to use the word control because I don't feel like I'm out of control or I need to control things. But it gives you like I'm not even sure how to say it, but it gives you something to care for and care about. It like motivates you to get up in the morning. You know what I mean? So, but I read stories about other soldiers who have used these programs and have been able to turn their life around. And, it's not different from things like Project Healing Waters or, whatever Wounded Warrior people do, which I had previously contacted Wounded Warriors, and they have, and I found this generally through most of the veterans programs, is there's very few programs like that or options within those programs for women. So motorcycling is something that's accessible to men and women. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to go in a group of just males or just females because you're going to be out in the woods for 5 days. You know what I mean? It's okay if males and females are together on a group ride or, camping or whatever.
Right.
Whereas most of the programs don't allow for that. So I just thought it was really awesome. I wish there was something like that in my area, but there's not.
Yeah, it's funny. There was. I actually wanted to ask you a question kind of about groups like that. So I'm going to ask you to speculate a little bit here, even though I sort of promised I wouldn't. But in your country and in mine, and probably in lots of others, there's actually a stunning number of veterans riding groups of one kind or another. Some of them are, are sort of have therapeutic intentions, as you described, and but then lots of other kinds too, kinds that are just about fraternity and esprit de corps, and I mean, I recently heard, for example, from a guy who has ridden 40,000 miles or so in the last 3 years, visiting and supporting Gold Star families, and this is just what he does. And the list of people and of organizations that do that kind of thing is amazingly long. And so this is sort of a long way of saying what struck me about this is that it's also kind of public. The being on a motorcycle and being a veteran is something that people want to. Some people, obviously, want to display, to make a point of, that there's something about the bikes that says, that says what words can't in some ways. So I'm wondering, again, without asking you to speak for those people, what do you think people like that are trying to tell the rest of us when they're so extroverted about it? Or maybe what do you hope the rest of us see when we see these people on bikes doing what they do?
It's really hard for me to answer because I don't understand it, honestly. There are a lot of rides around here throughout the summer for veterans benefits and stuff, and they're mainly like cruisers, these loud ass bikes that people ride. But honestly, I don't know how long the rides are. I don't know where they go. I don't know if maybe they just raise money because people pay to ride in the ride. I don't know how they work. And I don't know where that money goes, and when I see anybody doing something like that that's representing veterans or soldiers or whatever, I want to know, like my first question is always, where's the money going? Like, who is this helping? And why are you doing this? And I guess if I hope or have any hope for it, I want it to be that the money is going where it's needed. You know what I mean? And it's actually going to the soldiers, because there are some organizations out there that say they're for veterans and they're not fully for veterans. You know what I mean? So I have, first of all, I have a huge lack of knowledge when it comes to that stuff. And I also have some unsureness. I'm not sure. Like, I don't know, because I never see the end result. You know what I mean? Like, I'll see it on the news, all this is happening, but I never see the donations being made or who's being helped. So, and maybe that's where my lack of interest comes, because I don't seek that stuff out. I don't really celebrate the fact that, that I'm a combat veteran. Like, it's not, the biggest thing, I have a license plate that says, has one of my medals on it, but that's about it. I don't wear t-shirts that say Army or, pro-America or pro-gun shirts or anything like that. Like, it's something I did. It's who I am now. and I loved being a soldier, but I don't really want the rest of the world to know it.
Right.
If that, and I'm not even sure why, but I'm not super, I don't even know what the word is. I'm not like, hey, I'm a veteran to everybody, you know?
Right. Yeah, I understand.
I guess essentially I don't feel special because I was a soldier. You know what I mean? Like I'm first before anything, I'm a human being, and I just want to be treated like one.
Yeah, I mean, that resonates for me. I mean, I don't judge the people who are extroverted about this at all, or the people who make a point of it. That's their journey, and I think lots of them do good and important work. And again, I can't imagine, the life, that you've led. I can only imagine the life that I've led. But if I were in your shoes, I do think that I would prefer that to be a more private matter somehow. I think. I think if I if I were you, that's such an awful premise for a statement. But I think I would want people to see me go by and just say, "There goes a motorcyclist." Is that kind of, does that sum it up?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like you, I don't judge them either. I'm glad that people are out there doing stuff for veterans. I hope that it's on the up and up, you know what I mean? And I like seeing it sometimes. Sometimes I don't understand it. You know what I mean? I'm not sure. I just am not sure about it, but
Yeah.
I don't want to be seen as a combat veteran. I want to be seen as a person, and I think like the biggest thing I do is I go to Home Depot a lot, so I do use my veterans discount there. But aside from that, like I'm just me, and when I'm on that bike, like I'm not wearing my uniform. You know what I mean? You can't see me. You can just see a motorcyclist, and I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I'm smiling listening to you. So I'm just gonna ask you to speculate kind of one more time, because I thought I found a funny statistic. Apparently, about 16% of soldiers in the U.S. Army ride motorcycles, which is more than 50% higher incidence than for the general population. But interestingly, it's also higher incidence than for other branches of the service. Air Force and Navy, the statistics are kind of within the margin of error versus, the general population. But it's specifically Army that tends to be overpopulated with riders. Without without asking you to speak with authority about that, do you have any theories about why that might be?
Oh man, I mean, obviously I don't know for sure, but if I had to guess, I would say it's because of our infantry. You know what I mean? We're ground pounders. We're never clean. You know, no matter what our job is, unless you're maybe in the food section, but we're never clean. We're always just sitting in the dirt somewhere, or doing whatever. So I think we just enjoy being outside, and we enjoy engaging with our surroundings because we're oriented to that. You know what I mean? And it's just an adventure. I mean, motorcycling in general, even if you're just taking your little commuter to a doctor's appointment, it's an adventure on a motorcycle more than it is get in your car and go. You know what I mean? So it's just it's fully engaging your surroundings and being part of it in a way that you can't generally do in a vehicle or in a car. So, and I think, just in that level of danger and excitement too. I mean, that has to be a huge draw, because I know when I first came home, I was very, what's the word? I basically sought out danger for a while. Like I was a jerk. I would go out and drink and try to find people that wanted to punch me in the face, and you know what I mean? Like just dumb stuff. But So I'm sure there's a little bit of that in there too. But I think it's just that we're always in the dirt.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, the thing about danger on a bike is that it's a split second away all the time. It's not over the horizon somewhere. So that alone seems to be, more of a our ground pounder, to use your phrase, kind of thing. Besides the dirtiness. So speaking about the dirtiness, about being dirty, I was your new bike, your DRZ, came up earlier in the conversation, but had it not done so, I was going to ask you what attracted you to a dual sport bike. What you like about that, that thing, and I sort of think we have a couple of answers to that already, but I wonder if you want to add to it. What having ridden the Bonneville, which is a lovely motorcycle, and lots of people kind of want to marry those things. What makes you so happy on your DRZ? Because I remember it was the first time I'd seen an exclamation mark in one of your emails, so I had the sense that you had some.
Yeah. I'm still I'm excited. I literally just go out to the garage and look at it because I love it so much. But like I said earlier, it does what I tell it. You know what I mean? Like I have pretty good. I'm sure I don't have complete control over it, but I have pretty good control over it, and I'm never worried about making turns or being able to slow down or get out of a situation. My favorite part about it is that it's not super pretty, so I don't care if it gets scratched up or whatever. And it doesn't have to stay on the pavement. If I want to just go down a random road and see what's down there, I can do that. I don't have to worry about scratching my paint or my chrome or any of that crap. Like, it's a utility vehicle to me. So I think it's super exciting. Like the other day when I was out riding, I was like, man, I could just go right up that hill off this road, right up that hill, and nobody could stop me. You know what I mean? Like, I can do whatever I want on it within the law, but I love it for that reason. It has the ability to take me where I want to go without limits. When I had the Bonneville, my local shop guy probably hates me for this, but I kind of fought with him a little bit because I wanted this tire that was like an 80/20 or something like that. And because I wanted to, be able to go down hardpack or whatever on the Bonneville, and the tire hadn't been released yet. So I was waiting and waiting, and I'm like, what is taking so long? And I finally got it worked out. I ended up getting a different tire, and I never took it on a hardpack road. You know what I mean? And it wasn't because I didn't want to. It was just because I was unsure.
Yeah.
And the DRZ, I'm not unsure. And I also know that if I go down a dirt road and I drop it, I can pick it right back up and, start it back up again, and it's going to go. I'm not, hopefully, my handlebars aren't messed up or anything like that. But generally, I guess it's my version of a tank. You know what I mean?
Right.
I can do whatever I want it to do and go where it wants to go.
That's
I
awesome.
have an affinity for tanks, obviously.
I hear you smiling. I can't help but wonder, I mean, it sounds to me like you're the sort of person that would really enjoy the Trans Lab or the Alaska Highway or the backcountry. I forget what it's called in the States, but these sort of long distance, pretty isolated wilderness kind of rides. Does that sort of thing appeal to you? Is it on your radar screen?
Yes. There's a gentleman who was looking to buy my KLR before I traded it in, and he did a section. We just got one, I think, within the last year or two. I think it's called the BDMR or BMDR or something, back road.
BDR, that's it.
I'm not sure what it's called, but
yep.
It goes from New York to Tennessee, I think, or something. And he did it this summer. And, we have been talking through text. He literally, contacted me through Craigslist about my bike, but we exchanged numbers and we're talking. And I think we might actually do some of the sections of it next summer. That's what I wanted to do this summer, but I ended up getting a job, so I couldn't do it. But I put myself to sleep thinking about that at night sometimes. You know, when my mind is racing, I'm like, let me just think about my motorcycle. And I just like picture myself doing this. Like, I'm so excited about it. But yeah, that absolutely appeals to me. And just, you know, being, like I said, being out in the dirt and just taking a nice ride through the woods, and, you know, you feel like you want to take a break, just set up camp for the night. And, you know, and, you know, that being in the Army has helped me with that, because I pretty much just need a sleeping bag and some baby wipes,
right.
and obviously food and hydration. You know what I mean? So, and I have all that stuff. So
I'm excited for you.
I'm not a glamper or whatever.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said I'm excited for you, and you're definitely one of us. No doubt about that. I guess so. This might be putting you on the spot a little bit. I hope not, but I wonder what you would say to your fellow motorcyclists, people like me, who have not experienced the things that you've experienced. What can we learn if we can learn from soldiers who ride?
I think the biggest thing you can learn, or that I might be able to, the biggest piece of advice that I could give about it is that sometimes your mind can be your own worst enemy. And I learned this in basic training, because you don't, you know, your mind will tell you your body's tired, you know, you need sleep, you need this, you're hurt, whatever. That doesn't mean you can't keep going. And when we were marching back from our final FTX at basic training, my feet were so swollen, like my arches had fallen, and my feet were so swollen that when we did get back and I took my boots off, they had to give me a brand new pair of boots that were bigger, because I couldn't get mine back on. So, you know, marching on the way back, I had that problem. I carried the saw the whole time, which normally you would have an M16, but my drill sergeant just gave me a saw. So, you know, it was just some extra weight, nothing crazy, but it matters when you're, you know, marching 12 miles or whatever. But, and we're marching back, and I was so dehydrated. I thought I was going to pass out. And I didn't want to say anything to anybody, because I'm like, we're almost there, you know what I mean? And I can't fall out now, whatever. And so, you know, we're walking, and I'm just like trying not to pass out. And all of a sudden, somebody is standing like on the side of the road, like you would if, you know, you were watching a marathon, and hands me this little cup of blue juice, which I'm guessing is Gatorade or something. And I drank it. And I was like, I felt like somebody had breathed life into me. Like I felt completely renewed. I'm like, okay, I'm good now, you know, whatever. I swear to God, to this day, I don't know if that was a hallucination or if that really happened. I don't remember. And it doesn't matter, because I finished it. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't pass out. I kept going. And I just think sometimes people quit because they think they can't do something, but you don't know until you try. So don't let your mind play tricks on you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the advice that I would give a soldier. So I think that translates into any aspect of your life.
Yeah, no doubt. And certainly learning to ride a motorcycle, you just don't get anywhere if you don't push yourself a little bit beyond your comfort zone. I don't know, you know, how valid the parallel is, but sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, there were some girls, there were some women at the safety course that I went through they were so close to getting it. You know, like I could see from day 1 to day 2 to day 3, and they were so close, but then they didn't come for test day. They just didn't do it. And I'm like, why wouldn't you show up? You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if you pass or fail. The more time you spend on the bike, the better you're going to get. You know, obviously, I'm sure there are some people out there who, for some reason or another, are not not going to be motorcycle riders. I get that, but I just feel like they had it in their head that they couldn't do it, and that's why they couldn't do it. You know, like I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I have similar memories about the safety course, which included the riding test, and it was almost as though people's pride got in the way somehow.
Yeah, like they were embarrassed to make mistakes and whatever, and that's the whole point of the motorcycle safety course. Like, you want to make your mistakes there, so when you're on the street, you know how to prevent that from happening.
Yep. Yeah, and I think there's some wisdom in you kind of being patient about finding a group to ride with, because I think that makes you self-conscious somehow. When I'm riding alone, I'm a god. But although I know that's not true, it means my mistakes are invisible, so I'm less concerned about making them. Anyway, yeah.
I'm excited to get into riding with that group because, again, being in the military has, I think it's kind of erased my ability to be self-conscious, because I know that if I'm doing something wrong, that somebody's going to teach me how to do it right. You know what I mean? So if I'm going to make a mistake, I want to be surrounded by people that are going to help me correct it, rather than laugh at me or make fun of. I mean, you can still make fun of me. I don't care about that, but don't just let me keep making the same mistake. You know what I mean? Like, teach me something. I love learning, so teach me.
Yeah.
It wasn't really. I just am weird about being around people. I'm very much I isolate myself a lot. So that was the hump that I had to get over.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Giving up self-consciousness is, that's a gift, and it probably means you're going to be a great rider. I hate to. I'm looking at the timer here, and I see that we're, nearly at the promised 90 minutes. So I guess we better wrap it up. Although I feel like I could talk to you all afternoon. Look, I don't know what the etiquette is for this kind of thing, given that we live in different countries. But I still feel like I want to thank you for your service. And I definitely want to thank you for speaking with me today. You have been so generous with your story and just given me a ton to think about. I bet that will be true of everyone who listens.
I hope so. It was really nice to do this. Well, obviously, when you first asked me, I was a little nervous, but I'm glad that I chose to do it. And thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Ride safe out there and hang in there till spring. It will come.
All right. You too.
Bye now. There are some stories that you just can't add much to. I'm in awe of people who willingly step into harm's way for the sake of something bigger than themselves, and even more so when they have to fight a second private war to recover from that experience. I don't really feel equal to the task of making sense of all that. So instead, I'll focus on the question that inspired this episode. What is it about soldiers and motorcycles? And here, I think, Valerie left us with some real gifts. She said 3 things that kind of made a strong impression on me. She said that motorcycles come with a kind of esprit de corps, comrades who have your back even if you're a stranger. She said that bikes give her a bridge to her own past before she was a soldier. And yet, at the same time, they let her be a soldier. She talked about scanning her sector and putting her hyper-alertness to work in a way that felt healthy and normal. Well, there's nothing like seeing what you have through the eyes of someone else who had to struggle to get it. For a day or two after this interview, I found myself thinking a lot about whether I'm putting everything into being a motorcyclist that I could. Whether I'm being enough of a friend to other riders. Whether I remind myself often enough that this is fun, and whether I stay in touch with how it all felt in the beginning. And whether I'm always hyper-alert enough to protect the privilege of being able to ride a motorcycle at all. I think what gives people in uniform a special affinity for these machines are things that should be part of every rider's life. For me, this conversation was yet more proof that motorcycle people are the best people, and I need to do my best to be one of them. Well, thanks for listening. You'll find show notes for this episode at thismotorcyclelife.com, and I'll include some links that Valerie shared with me for the organizations that helped her on the road home. That's also how you can reach me if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions. Emailing me at thismotorcyclelife@gmail.com works too, and as you know, I'm delighted to answer every one of them. You can also follow me on Instagram, where I like to post pictures of bikes I find on the street, although it's been a little quiet there since it started snowing. Valerie isn't on Instagram, but if you want to say hi, feel free to leave a comment on my website, and I'll make sure she sees it. Well, this episode's playlist recommendation actually comes from a playlist my wife made for me to ride with. The band from Sweden is called Unip, and the track is called Line of Fire. Despite the title, which may seem a little on the nose for this episode, it's actually about what happens when life puts you to the test, whatever that means for you. And it also pairs pretty well with A Twisty Road. Buy it wherever you like to get your music. And in the meantime, keep staying alive out there.
Of each wave, bright as lightning. What would you say if you had to leave today? Leave everything behind, even though for once you're shining. Sounds you realize it's just a wind, and you notice it matters doing what you let under your skin. Put to the test when you step back from the line of fire.